everybody, my name is Luke Marr and this is HauteLeMode, and today on HauteLeMode we are finishing up our reviews from the Haute Couture Fall 2020 season. Now the last show to actually happen was Valentino's Haute Couture show, and honestly in a quite Alaya-esque manner, Valentino showed about 2 weeks after everybody else. He would show maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks later than the rest of the fashion calendar. I feel like that's fine. I feel like it's necessary, and I feel like it probably has taken a lot longer for haute couture garments to be produced. And I mean, listen, as long as you're not Chanel throwing together a resort collection in 3 weeks, I'm happy. So whenever you're gonna show. There's no schedule, there's no reason anybody's going to Paris or Milan or London or New York, so do whatever goddamn pleases you. And Valentino obviously did. Also, I just want to say we have set up some channel memberships, so if you guys are looking to support the channel with just, you know, a $1 or $2, that would be absolutely lovely. It will help us bring in more collaborators and more contributors, so there will be more fashion content for you to enjoy. Pierpaolo Piccoli's Fall 2020 Valentino Haute Couture collection is the finale to the first all-digital haute couture season. The collection was named The Performance of Grace and Light, and well, in the middle of a pandemic, political unrest, and racial injustice all over the world, grace and light is something we need. Pierpaolo asked photographer Nick Knight to lens the photos and video shoot, and Pierpaolo also seemed to have the circus in mind. I will say, with models standing at least over 8 feet on what looked like stilts, and others sitting on swings suspended in the air like acrobats, it just felt very under the big top. But that's the last bit of big top you'll see from the collection, as Pierpaolo stripped himself of color and amusement this season, which isn't really a bad thing. Instead, he considered it a rebirth. Also, we should note, in my opinion, you can't project things onto your dress as you're walking down the street, so I'm not really going to take that into consideration during the review. Also, for the FKA Twigs stands, Pierpaolo commissioned her to sing, and well, FKA Twigs plus Valentino is one of the best PR placements I've seen in recent years. So the collection opened with a sterile white taffeta gown with a rectangular plunge that exposed the model's cleavage. Again, the model looks gigantic, as I believe she is literally wearing stilts. Or I don't know how she's standing that tall, but she's very tall. But unfortunately, I wasn't privy to the Valentino press conference. Sad face. The shoulders of the gown are pronounced and are ruffled, but the dress is in and of itself a Pierpaolo Valentino Haute Couture signature, as we've seen many different instances of this look for years now, albeit in brighter colors. The headpiece is made of what looks like white hydrangeas that adds a fantastic element that we have all come to expect from Pierpaolo, because if you can grow flowers for hair, you can spend 6 figures for a dress, right? The wrinkles at the bottom are definitely noticeable, but A, it's taffeta, and B, well, working for Zac Posen taught me that trying to steam the wrinkles out of high quality taffeta is virtually impossible. A silver sequined hooded gown easily reminds me of Valentino's Beijing Haute Couture collection from 2019, although it doesn't necessarily look great to me here. Of course, we can observe the handiwork it takes to hand embroider all of those sequins, but I won't say it's cute. The creamy coat with tiers of ruffles also has an incredible amount of work put into it, but like the dress it covers, it's lackluster. The previous sequin look is easily forgotten, as the silver sequined and hooded bodysuit that follows is breathtaking. The horizontal striped feather coat with sheer chiffon dividing the strips of white thin ostrich feathers is immaculate. The collar is particularly lovely as it cascades down the model's shoulders and almost is the inverse of Jon Snow's furry collars from Game of Thrones. Like, it's just a beautiful jacket coat. If you buy it, I'm very happy for you. You're gonna look very sexy in the bedroom, because honestly, I don't know where the hell you're gonna wear that except the bedroom. Maria Carla Boscano wows in a creamy off-the-shoulder ruffle bust gown, with the bust looking cloud-like and spanning wide across the bust to almost create an exaggerated bateau neckline effect. The shape of the skirt is fantastic as it slowly falls down, which, with the height of the gown, allows for the process to not feel rushed. The hem also curves inward, often called a bubble hem, which just raises the elegance of the gown and creates a beautiful shape. It's like a beautiful upside down ice cream cone, and I love it. Another sweet little detail is the silver opera gloves that almost look like liquid silver climbing up Maria Carla's arms. We finally get to see a model sitting on some sort of an acrobatic swing, but my name isn't Barnum or Bailey, so what do I know about acrobatic swings? But I do know about fashion, and well, this is the kind of fashion I like to see. The model's torso is cocooned in white feathers attached to stiff wires that create a particular shape. The style is reminiscent of Pierpaolo's second solo haute couture show, one that gained his solo career at Valentino global recognition. Kaia Gerber, then a young modeling ingenue and daughter of supermodel Cindy Crawford, emerged on the spring 2018 runway wearing a headdress of fuchsia feathers that made her look almost like a bird of paradise. Pierpaolo closed the show with a model wearing an aqua headdress to drive the point home, and the actress Frances McDormand's striking version of the look of the 2018 Met Gala sent Valentino fans into overdrive. Pierpaolo has dabbled in the style since, and here in a full top with a lofty pleated skirt in white gives us a new take on the technique. Like, imagine you look like a gigantic truffula tree. Jealous. Next was another schooling in the art of haute couture, as a white chiffon cape with a bunched and ruffled collar was covered in white embroidered chrysanthemums, both big and small. Now, not only will these chrysanthemums be hand embroidered by the very atelier workers Pierpaolo is so dedicated to highlighting at Valentino, but I believe they have a much deeper meaning. Chrysanthemums were first popularized in China and signify life and rebirth, while in Europe they are thought of more in terms of a flower revolving around death. While in America they have the tone of respect and honor. But the flowers usually bloom in late summer and autumn, which makes them a great representation of the fall haute couture season. Pierpaolo's hidden message of rebirth and sympathy means he's communicating multiple meanings throughout this look, and in my humble opinion, the entirety of the show. I think he's expressing sympathy for those who have lost loved ones or livelihoods or both to COVID-19, and yet knows that it's his job as a couturier to look forward and focus on shaping minds, to realize this is a time that could change our world, and hopefully for the better. A silver sequined fringe gown just reminds me of the swallow bird with majestic wings and two tail ends that jut out underneath its torso. The look to me isn't incredibly wearable, but I can only imagine the amount of hours it took to sequin each one of those strips. It doesn't always look great, but again, it's haute couture, like it takes time. I respect that, I understand that. As majestical as Valentino's collection is, with whimsy, deeper meanings, and fantasy, it's still the art of haute couture, meaning everything is handmade and worked on by multiple atelier experts. Albeit instead of the normal 6 workers, only 2 were allowed to work on a piece together at a time in order to ensure social distancing was in effect. So we stand people that keep the atelier healthy and safe. I also think it's important we mention that the Valentino collection came around 2 weeks after the rest of the haute couture collections. But to me, that speaks to the luxury of haute couture, and that Valentino takes itself especially seriously. Instead of rushing to put out a collection, they understood their customers would rather know that the collection was crafted with care and that the proper time was taken in order to ensure that, and hopefully the safety of their workers as well. And that's what haute couture is really about in my mind. Next, an ivory off-the-shoulder gown is full of cascading tiers of feathered hemmed panels of fabric that reminds me of the photography technique where you lower the shutter speed so water will look like mist. I don't know, that's just the vibes I was getting. Then a white taffeta gown has these puffball sleeves and an asymmetrical drape that's been pressed into the top of the dress. The look isn't incredibly impressive, but it's not bad either. But I think this is a great time to discuss Pierpaolo's color choice this season. We haven't seen a collection so devoid of bright hues and pigmentation from Valentino since Pierpaolo's first solo collection, which was spring 2017. And even then, there were muted pinks and greens and yellows that gave us a preview of one of Pierpaolo's signature house codes for Valentino. It's the colors. It's the colors, you know, it's almost like you just tripped acid every single season. But this season was whites and creams and ivories and metallic silvers with the focus on those whites. Now, I'm not a color theorist, but white is commonly thought to be the blending of all colors in some theories, and sometimes they agree or disagree on that depending on if you're talking about pigmentation or light. But to me, it makes Pierpaolo Pierpaolo's choice of colors is even more interesting. In a Women's Wear Daily article, he is quoted as saying, "It gave a new opportunity to the atelier. We could not dye, embroider, or print." Which to me means the atelier team might not have been able to actually dye their own fabrics. I don't know if they actually dye fabrics during the haute couture process, but if they do, I'm interested. Which results in that use of white. But seeing how some color theories believe white is the reflection of all colors on the visible light spectrum to the human eye, maybe Pierpaolo is trying to get us to understand that while we can't see the color, it doesn't mean it isn't there. In showing us almost all white gowns, he's forcing us to look a little bit deeper at the meaning, and forcing us to look a bit more intricately than what our brains see and process. I mean, black is commonly seen as the absence of color, and maybe that's why there isn't any black in this collection. He might want us to know there is color, hues, and pigmentation throughout this collection, and we as the audience just shouldn't ignore it. I don't know if that has a deeper meaning, I don't want to speak to the deeper meaning, but my fashion conspiracy theories are jumping out here. Then we had an ivory bouffant gown with a tight bodice with wrap-around off-the-shoulder sleeves appearing. It feels very simple, elegant, and somewhat commercial, which I believe the Valentino business will also benefit from. The company, from my knowledge, has been fighting off some of the biggest fashion conglomerates so that the brand can remain independent, which is a fight that we should all be watching and cheering on the underdog for, who happens to be Valentino in this case. So while for Pierpaolo, fantasy is at the heart of haute couture, it doesn't mean that fantasy shouldn't be bought or be made somewhat commodifiable for the company to survive on. Also, the wispy headdress of flowers that almost looks like it's moving counterclockwise is splendid. I mean, listen, I don't know if people actually buy these haute couture Valentino headdresses, but they should. They really goddamn should. A simple chiffon caped gown has another rectangular plunge and also exposes the ribs and long sleeves that fall to the floor. The sleeves do have holes in them, which would be helpful as you'd be doing a lot of pulling your sleeves up, trying to like get your wallet out at the local bakery or 7-Eleven. So, you know, that's important. The tied bow belt is underwhelming and reminds me of She Who Must Not Be Named. But the fact that as the gown falls, the chiffon piles on the floor and showcases a less opaque fabric underneath is quite a sweet little scene. Listen, again, it's haute couture, devils in the goddamn details. Next, a white gown is pleated heavily till it reaches the top of the thigh, before a slit is revealed and an extra long skirt falls down almost like a train. The attention to technique in this collection is spectacular, but I do wish we could have seen the rest of the skirt in that beautiful pleating, as I think it would have been such a feat for the atelier workers. To be able to pleat such long pieces of fabric in such minuscule pleats. Obviously, it would have been so much work, but if it was accomplished, it would be something to be tremendously proud of. There is also a hat that we see that reminds me of a beautiful glowing white sea nettle jellyfish that's just floating aimlessly through the ocean. It's also something we encountered during the fall 2018 couture show in colors like turquoise, purple, and pink, and it's interesting to see so many references to past collections, considering this collection really is pointing at rebirth. The hat this season is different though, as it's definitely longer to keep in step with the rest of the looks, I assume. While Pierpaolo is definitely helping us to look to the future, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't acknowledge past successes, in my opinion. Another white gown is an off-the-shoulder moment that is covered fully in ruffles from bicep to stilt. Something else that is great about Pierpaolo's lack of the use of color is that we do get a focus on the actual textile manipulation, like these gigantic loofah-likes all over this gown. See what I did there? Loofah-like, luca-like, look-like. I can only imagine how long it took to cover such a large dress in what I can only imagine are highly specific balls of tulle that probably have to be sewn a certain way in order to maintain uniformity. It can easily be turned into a dumb meme about toilet paper, I'm sure, but I'd rather think about the immense work put into it. On top of that, the torso area interests me, as the white straps must hold up a tight bodycon dress, probably as a medium for the ruffle balls to be sewn onto. And the way the two arches create an almost cape-like feel is just a minute detail I love to see. I have to say, this is a personal favorite from the collection, as the horizontal creasing or pleating almost reminds me of a lobster tail. Also, no, I don't mean an actual lobster tail, but the pastry variety that has those intricate folds of flaky crust, and I really want a lobster tail right now. The two are very similar in my mind, so I will will be calling this the lobster tail pleat, and until I'm informed of a more technical name, that's all I got. It's in this beautiful ivory from collar to hem, and again, while from afar the texture of the dress might not seem very appealing, it's a technique we don't see all that often, and considering the amount of time and effort it must have taken for the atelier workers to pleat such a large circumference, probably hundreds of times, is again something I'm willing to applaud. The finale gown is a tulle masterpiece, and well, seeing as how we have seen so many tulle pieces and looks on the runways and red carpets over the past few years, me calling this a tulle masterpiece instead of a tulle monstrosity means something. The torso is enshrouded in tulle, with the shoulders creating circular shapes that have the layers of tulle creating opaque layers the closer you get to the body, and more sheer layers, or well, just a layer, the further you get from the body. Instead of just gathering the tulle and sewing it in horizontal lines or fun florets like the other designers, when the tulle on this gown hits the bust, we lose that fluffiness of the shoulders, but it adds a more realistic angle for us to see the tulle. The tulle looks pulled and twisted in different ways and seems more matted than the teased shoulders and gigantic skirt. Pierpaolo has definitely used bows as a way to color block or juxtapose colors or patterns in looks in past seasons, but this white bow doesn't have that same effect. The skirt of the gown is layered tulle that doesn't fall uniformly, which actually creates a quite ethereal feel, and even the uneven hem just has a ghostly or spiritly vibe to it. Maybe I'm just thinking of this because it's a fall collection, but regardless, it was a really nice final touch. Overall, Pierpaolo's Valentino Fall 2020 Haute Couture collection, through the images shown, depicts a real look at haute couture. Without the flashy clients, the big fashion shows, and the oodles of colors, Pierpaolo stripped back and showed us technique after technique after technique, and provided subtle messages about what our future can hold, even in the midst of a pandemic. I'm excited to see what happens next, and let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm very interested, and this is a show that I think is a lot deeper than all of the other haute couture shows that we talked about. It just seems to have more meaning, it seems to have more feeling, and it's something that, even having finished this video now, I don't really feel like the story has been completely told about it. So again, let me know what you guys think. I will see you guys in the next video, and TTYL.